Hello and welcome to another video. We're going to continue with the previous example of the calculating of the sale, except this time I'm going to actually teach you about a function, very handy just to create data randomly and also to save us time in the future when I'm trying to use it in order to demonstrate some ideas here and there. This function is random between. It actually creates for us a random number between any two values you choose. For example, if I want to know, if I wanted to create number between 300 and let's say $4,000 for each one of them. So I treat them fairly. I don't, in this case, random. It's going to actually give me a value between, again, 300 and 4,000. You could start from 1 to 4,000 if you wish to. And now you notice here, every time I run it, it's going to be a different value. But in a second, I'm going to make all these values actually constants so they don't bother me by changing all the time. Take a moment to learn from these tricks. I like to share with you tricks and tips through the whole class. Those can be actually very time-saving in the long run. If I click on the edge here with the right click, believe it or not, we rarely use the right click to do anything except to show a menu of some sort or to get the help. So if I drag this with the right click to the right and put it back to the left and let go of my finger of the mouse, it will say copy here as values only. Now you notice here behind the screen is not anymore the function there, so that disappeared and only left me with those values. In the future you might be able to use similar things, like where you wanted to actually send the end result without having to show the function to your colleagues or your whoever your associate. So this is going to save us time in the future when we use random functions. To go back to the total, as we did before in the previous video, total I'm going to be using actually to quickly go to the auto sum. Just make sure that you selected the right range. Not every time, as you will see, Excel is going to choose the right range. I'm going to show it to you in a second how dangerous it is if you don't look around to see. And of course you could drag this down in order to get that. I could select everything here, click on the accounting formatting for money or currency, and notice here I could go ahead and find the average for April and May in a second, and we're going to find the minimum. And we're going to find also the maximum, just to see who really did the best, who did the worst, or who did what is the average sales. As you notice here, we could go ahead and click on this one here. I'm going to use the auto sum option here. However, I'm going to click on average because that's the right function. Can you see that Excel chose the wrong range because it added this cell, which is C7. I don't want a C7. How about if somebody by mistake entered a value here, it will be included in the average. So I need to go ahead and select my range myself. Again, here I made a mistake. I should have selected the whole thing and select the whole thing and hit enter to confirm it. Notice, because of doing this correctly, and there's a similar need to do May's calculation exactly like April, so there is actually no problem with using the fill handle to the right to do that calculation relatively. What do we mean by relatively? One more time, if you notice for this one here, when we moved from here C3 through E3, and immediately Excel adjusted the C4 to E4, immediately adjusted to E5, C5 to E5, and also to C6 E6. So again, this is relative address in relation to the next adjacent range. Excel will actually change the cell addresses in order to accommodate for the new calculation. Whether we did it this way, or this way, going down, which it did it, or this way to the right also will do it. Look here in this one here, it's C3 through C6, and here it's going to go actually D3 through D6. max, and it's going to adjust itself relatively to the right of the cell. The same thing here for the maximum, and I'm going to be using also the max out of the AutoSum, or the AutoSum here. As you notice, I'm going to use the max, not the sum. So I'm going to click on the sum, max. Here we go, max. And again, look at what happens. The C8 is the only selected. So Excel actually looked at around it and grabbed the value that is closest to it, that doesn't have any continuity or no spaces. I mean, there's spaces for there. If there's no space in this cell here, Excel would have selected everything from here all the way to the top. Again, I wanted to make sure that you do understand you need to select the range in order to get it correctly. Not all the time Excel will guess it for you. And here we go, we're going to do that. And notice also we're going to go ahead and do the minimum one more time for another function, minimum. And again, look, I'm not trying to find the minimum between the average and actually the maximum. Sorry, I should have changed this to max. And I should look closely about what I'm doing here. So this is actually, I'm going to change the other one here. This is the max. And this is going to change, which I'm going to edit myself, min. That is the function minimum. And notice it's of course going to give me a different. If I change this to 1 for whatever reason, it should be reflected as the minimum. Of course, I could go ahead and do Control Z to undo that changes instead of going all the way to the ribbon to undo. So here we go again one more time. We're going to go ahead and select that and actually use the fill handle, click in, drag in order to get us the maximum. So any changes in these values is going to be reflected in these changes as well. Alright, so what are we going to do here? I wanted to go ahead and show you a very important concept that we have to understand before we could continue. I'm clicking in row A and I'm inserting another row. I'm inserting another row by clicking the right button in my mouse to give me that menu. And here I'm going to go ahead and put, let me put this one here, I'm going to go ahead and put commission and hit F7. Just make sure the spelling is correct. And I'm going to put 10%, okay, like the previous example. And here I'm going to call it variable commission. Why I'm going to call it variable commission? Because, as you notice here, I'm going to go ahead and select all this and use the wrap text and adjust it a little bit so it will be actually, here we go. Also, I'm going to go ahead and make it looks better. And if you want to go ahead while I'm making it look better, I could choose my favorite color is the blue and make the header blue. Let's focus on what we need to do here. If I wanted to get the variable commission of any value that this cell would be actually is about calculating this one here multiplied by this one here. Great. We're going to get the 10%. How about if the manager really a little bit of on the moody side and he changed his 10% to 5%? Or he was happy and he changed it to 20%. So you notice how easy it is to change because the value in the commission is not anymore constant, it's actually a variable. It could changes to whatever the manager or the person wanted to change it to. This is very similar to calculating a tax based on the state tax rate. So if I am actually in Texas and I want to move to Florida, then Florida's tax rate is going to change, and as a result you could change it in one cell. You don't have to change it through the hundreds of calculation if you did choose it as a constant. So what we need to do is going to go ahead and make sure that we can do the same thing by using the fill handle. A lot of people not knowing what's going on, we're going to create here a big problem. Why this problem happened and how we can avoid it in the future. No big deal. Excel did not violate its agreement with you. It did exactly what you wanted to do. It moved you from F5 to F6. Fantastic. However, you told it to use the relative address, which means to take D2 and move it to the next cell. When you do to move it to the next cell, it moved you to D3. What is in D3? There is nothing. Any empty cell is going to really be presented by 0. That's why we multiplied F6 by D3, resulted into a 0. So again, remember multiplication, multiplying anything by 0 is 0. Dividing anything by 0, we should completely avoid this because that's undefined. And we will learn later in the future how to really prevent that from taking place in our calculation. And of course, raising anything to the power of 0 using the exponents, which is the caret sign, is 1. So this is why we got the 0. The third one, it gets really more interesting when Excel really give up on your try to calculate by saying, okay, you want me to multiply F7 by what? By D4, which is really a word, and here it says, I'm giving up. I'm going to give you an error. There is no way I could understand what you intended to do. So deal with it later. But look at Robert, how happy he is as a result of taking his sales, which is only $5,650, and multiplying it by, look, by 2,701, which is what? That's like 2,700 0.1 multiplied by 100%. That's why we had fantastic amount of money for him. He would be happy, of course. He would be retired, moving to Key West or Hawaii, and will be happy for the rest of his life. However, we have to be treating everybody fair, because look at Mary. She's not very happy for getting 0, and Sally has no clue what she's going to get in, and Roberts, of course, his happiness will come to a short term quickly. So what we need to do here is to take the D2 here and prevent it from moving to D3 to D4 to D5. And remember, that could be changing from 4 people to 400 or 4,000 people. So what we need to do here is to lock D2, not lock the ability of changing the value from 20% to 10%, lock D2 as an address so it does not move to D3 to D4 to D5. I'm taking my time here so we could get the concept clearly. And what we need to do is to lock it, meaning freeze that cell or make it an absolute address. This has nothing to do with absolute value, where we turn a value from negative to positive. This is locking the cell address, and that's what we mean by absolute address versus relative address that is able to move with me to the next adjacent calculation. So how do I do it? There's 2 ways. While I type in it, I hit the function key F4. We have F1, F2 through F12. I'm going to press F4. It put the $ around it, and it makes it absolute that way. So if you want to type the $ yourself, that's fine. If you're using a different computer like Mac and you don't have F4, for whatever reason, you could type it yourself until you figure out what is really there to be used to create the same autofill for you. So I'm going to go ahead and hit enter. Notice here, when I go ahead and drag, click and drag, absolutely all of these going to be actually D2, F6 multiplied by D2, F7 multiplied by D2, F8 multiplied by D2, which means we froze the cell D2. When do we freeze things, and when we should allow ourselves to do the relative address? It's very easy. It should not really confuse us. If I have a cell or multiple cells that need to be used repeatedly through many calculations, like this one here, D2, need to go through John's totals, Mary's totals, Sally's totals, Robert's total, then we can treat it as an absolute address. If there is no need for me to really treat like here, any one of them standing out, none of those are standing out, everything has to be repeated in the same exact manner, there's nothing here on the side by itself, then we'd use that relative address. Before I conclude this videos, I'm going to give you another trick. The trick here is pertaining to charting, which is very, very helpful. Of course, you could select any range of the list of the data that you have. I mean, I could go ahead and create a chart based on name, the 3 months and total, or I could select name, press the control key after the initial selection. Don't do the press the control key initially, then select the total, and I will do only the name and the total. Anyway, regardless, I'm going to go ahead and select now a name through the total, and look, this is going to be a magical moment for some of you if you don't know it. It's to hit the function key F11. And here we go. We ended up with a chart that takes a few seconds to really fix it. For example, I could go ahead and say total sales for April through what we call that June. All right. And I could go ahead and make it a little bit different if you choose to. For example, could you change the color? Look here. Fascinating, beautiful, beautiful, beautiful things that you could do with Excel. And here we go. If you wanted to go ahead and leave it as it is, and we could go ahead and go to the quick layout, and there is a lot of different formatting. I would play with this. I would take my time. My favorite one is the second one in the second row, which is called Layout 5, where it allows you to put the data along with the column chart. Maybe some of you will say, okay, I don't like the column chart. I'm used to have the bar chart, which is horizontal instead of vertical. I'll say no problem. We could go to the change the data type, chart type, and change that to bar chart. Look here, in a second I'm able to do this. The bar chart is really, really more meaningful than the column chart, in my opinion, because it gives you really a clear distinction. But that's up to you, up to your culture in your organization. You know, whatever philosophy you have, your boss have, that's up to them. Or so that's basically also could be a very quick change, and you could go ahead and add the data here, add really some stunning. See, here we go. Could play with this. Sometimes the best way is to play with it in order to get a good understanding of what we need to do. Of course, you could go ahead and change the x-axis. We're going to go ahead. I mean, this is the y-axis, the axis title, and we're going to play with this. The whole idea here to show you a trick quickly. All right, so we're going to stop here. There's more to charting than I just showed you. Of course, there is varieties of types of charting that we need to distinguish between them. Why we use line chart versus bar chart versus pie chart of all the charts that we're going to use. And also I'm going to share with you how to create living or dynamic or organic type of chart that is really going to make some of you very happy. Thank you for watching, and I'm going to go ahead and switch to my sheet 1 here. Go ahead and color all that with a different coloration based on the blue. I like color harmony, meaning the color are not contrasting each other or really you know, making each other stand out or screaming at you, or for that's really up to you. I'm not going to tell you what you need to do with your color. Alright, so stop here, and we're going to continue with other videos in no time.